The Galactic Menagerie was the largest zoo in the known universe. It sat on a planet called Veloria Prime, and every year millions of aliens came to see its collection. The zoo had creatures from 10,000 worlds. There were singing crystals from the ice moons of Draven. There were floating gas beings from the clouds of Nexer. There were tiny insects that could change color, and giant beasts that could crush mountains. But none of these exhibits drew crowds like the newest one. Director Kethveros stood at the entrance to Hall 7 and watched the visitors push against each other. He was a Valorian, tall and thin with scales that changed color in the light. His scales were currently a pleased shade of gold. This exhibit was his greatest achievement. The warning signs started 50 meters from the main viewing area. They pulsed with red light and displayed their message in 17 different languages. The word said, "Extreme danger. Deathworld Apex Predator. Class 7 lethal rating. Do not approach. The barrier. Do not attempt communication. Keep all appendages away from the containment field." The visitors read these signs with wide eyes. Some of them trembled. Others held their children close. A few turned back, too afraid to continue. But most of them walked forward, their curiosity stronger than their fear. Behind the shimmering blue barrier of the containment field, in a habitat designed to look like a primitive forest clearing, sat a human girl. Her name was Maya Chun. She was 12 years old by Earth counting, which made her young even by human standards. She had dark skin and black hair that she kept in 2 long braids. She wore simple clothes that the zoo had provided, a plain gray shirt and pants. She sat on a fake rock and read a paper book, one of the few possessions she had been allowed to keep. The crowd stared at her like she was the most terrifying thing they had ever seen. Maya did not look up from her book. She had learned to ignore the staring. In the 18 months since they had put her in this cage, she had learned to ignore many things. The whispers of the visitors, the clicking sounds of their cameras, the way they pointed at her and pulled their children back when she moved too quickly. She was reading a story about a girl who found a magic door to another world. It was a story she had read many times before, but she read it again because it helped her forget where she was. It helped her remember that somewhere out there, beyond the stars, a real home still existed. A group of Valorian schoolchildren pressed against the barrier. Their teacher, a tall female with blue scales, read from the information display in a loud voice. The human specimen was acquired 18 standard months ago from a crashed transport vessel. Humans originate from a Class 12 Deathworld called Earth, located in the Sol system approximately 8,000 light-years from Valorian space. Earth has a toxic oxygen atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, dangerous levels of solar radiation, and gravity that would crush most species. The planet's evolutionary history is extraordinarily violent. Humans are pursuit predators who evolved to hunt by, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. The children made sounds of horror and amazement. Notice the specimens. Physical structure, the teacher continued. The skeletal system is made of dense calcium compounds that can withstand impacts that would shatter Valorian bones. The muscular system, even in this juvenile specimen, contains enough strength to lift several times its own body weight. The teeth are designed for tearing flesh. The forward-facing eyes indicate a predator's vision, optimized for tracking prey. Maya turned a page. She had heard this speech hundreds of times. She knew what they said about her people. They called humans monsters. They called Earth a death world. They said her species was too primitive and too dangerous to be considered intelligent. The Exotic Species Bureau had classified humans as non-sapient animals. This meant that under galactic law, Maya had no rights. She was property, just like the singing crystals and the floating gas beings. She could be bought and sold. She could be kept in a cage. She could be studied and displayed and treated like a thing instead of a person. Maya remembered the day they took her. The colony transport had been damaged by an asteroid strike. The rescue ships had arrived and pulled the survivors from the wreckage. Maya's parents had been on a different section of the ship. The aliens had separated her from the other humans, had put her in a small room and told her she was being taken somewhere safe. The somewhere safe turned out to be this cage. For the first few months, Maya had screamed and cried and begged to be released. She had told them she was a person. She had told them she had a family. She had told them everything she could think of, but they did not listen. The scientists who studied her treated her words as meaningless sounds, like the barking of a dog or the chirping of a bird. Eventually, Maya stopped screaming. She stopped crying. She stopped begging. She learned to be quiet and still, to make herself small and unthreatening. She learned to find comfort in the few things they allowed her: books, drawing materials, a small music player loaded with songs from Earth. Director Kethferos walked through the crowd, his scale shifting to a satisfied purple. The exhibit was a massive success. Ticket sales had tripled since the human arrived. Academics from across the galaxy came to study the specimen. News networks broadcast stories about the terrifying creature from the Deathworld. No one asked if Maya was lonely. No one asked if she missed her family. No one asked if she dreamed about going home. A small alien child near the front of the crowd pressed her face against the barrier. She had blue fur and 4 large eyes, and she looked at Maya with an expression that was different from the others. It was not fear or disgust or morbid curiosity. It was something softer, something that almost looked like concern. Maya noticed the small alien watching her. For a moment, their eyes met. Then Maya looked back down at her book and continued reading about the girl who found the magic door. She did not know that this small blue alien would change everything. She did not know that sometimes the biggest changes in the universe begin with the smallest, people asking the simplest questions. For now, Maya just turned another page and tried not to think about how much she missed the sound of her mother's voice. Councilor Verithis reported what happened to zoo security. She expected them to punish her daughter and add more restrictions to the human exhibit. She expected the matter to end there. It did not end there. Zirith refused to stay away from Hall 7. Every day after school, she begged her mother to take her to the menagerie. When her mother refused, she asked her father. When her father refused, she asked her older cousin. When no one would take her, she found ways to go on her own. She would sit on the visitor side of the barrier for hours, just being there. When the crowds thinned and the guards were not watching, she would press the communication button and talk to Maya. They talked about many things. Maya told Zirith about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests and white mountains covered in snow. She described her school and her friends and her favorite foods. She explained the games human children played, and the stories they told, and the songs they sang. Zirith told Maya about Desha, about her family and her pet, and her dreams of becoming an explorer one day. She brought Maya pictures she had drawn and recordings of Deshan music. She smuggled in human books that she found in old databases, books that the zookeepers had not thought to give their specimen. Other children began to notice. A young Valorian named Kethix started lingering near the exhibit. He was the son of a wealthy merchant family, and he had been taught his whole life that humans were mindless predators. But he watched Zirith talking to Maya, and he saw something that did not match what he had been told. One day, he gathered his courage and approached the barrier himself. "Do humans really have music?" he asked through the communication panel. Maya looked at him with surprise. Then she smiled, a real smile this time. "Yes, we have been making music for thousands of years. We have instruments that make sounds with strings and wind and drums. We have songs about love and loss and hope and adventure. Cathic's S-scales shifted to a curious shade of orange. Can you sing something? Maya thought for a moment. Then she began to sing. It was a simple song, one her mother had taught her when she was small. The words were in a human language that Cathic's did not understand, but the melody needed no translation. It was beautiful and sad and full of longing. When she finished, Cathic's stood in silence. His scales had turned a color the Valorians only showed when they were deeply moved. That was wonderful, he whispered. Word spread among the children. A pair of Draveshi twins came to the exhibit. Their bodies were made of living crystal, and they communicated through patterns of light and sound. They asked Maya about Earth's oceans, because their own world had no liquid water. The oceans are vast, Maya told them. So big that you cannot see the other side. The water is salty and cold and full of life. There are fish of every color and shape. There are whales as big as spacecraft and jellyfish that glow in the dark. My family used to go to the beach every summer. I would build castles out of sand and swim until my skin wrinkled. The twins flickered with amazement. They had never imagined that a Deathworld could hold such beauty. A small Morlock child came next. Morlocks were fragile beings who lived in environmental suits because most atmospheres were toxic to them. This child asked if humans really jumped from high places for fun. Maya laughed. Some humans do. We call it skydiving or bungee jumping. We also climb mountains and surf on waves and fly in small machines called hang gliders. Humans love to feel the wind and test ourselves against nature. The Morlock child pressed against the glass of his suit, fascinated. Are you not afraid? Sometimes, Maya admitted. But we do not let fear stop us. We have a saying on Earth, feel the fear and do it anyway. Being brave does not mean being unafraid. It means doing what needs to be done, even when you are scared. The children listened. They learned. And then they went home and told their families what they had discovered. At first, the parents did not believe them. They thought their children were confused or making up stories. But the children insisted. They showed recordings they had made. They repeated the things Maya had told them. They asked questions that their parents could not answer. Why would an animal talk about her family? Why would a mindless predator sing beautiful songs? Why would a dangerous creature cry herself to sleep? The questions spread from households to schools to community meetings. They spread across social networks and news discussions. They reached the offices of academics and politicians and people who had never visited the menagerie in their lives. Director Kethvaros began to receive complaints. Parents were disturbed by what their children were telling them. Academic institutions demanded access to study the human more closely. Journalists started asking difficult questions about the exotic species, Bureau's classification process, and somewhere in the capital city, a member of the Galactic Ethics Oversight Committee received a message from her own daughter, a young girl with powder blue fur who had always been too curious for her own good. Counselor Varathis read her daughter's words 3 times. She looked at the recordings Zirith had attached. She listened to Maya sing and watched Maya cry and heard Maya describe a home and family that were lost to her. Then, Varathis did something she had never done in 20 years of government service. She began to question her own judgment. She went to her office and pulled the files on human classification. She read through the scientific reports and the assessment documents and the official determinations. And as she read, she began to see what she had been blind to before. The evidence was thin. The conclusions were based more on fear than fact. The scientists had decided what they wanted to believe and then found reasons to support it. Humans were different. Humans were strong. Humans came from a dangerous world. But none of that meant humans were not people. Varathis closed the files and sat in silence for a long time. Then she picked up her communication device and made a call to the Galactic Ethics Oversight Committee. "I need to report a possible misclassification," she said. "A significant one, involving a species called humanity." In Hall 7, Maya sat on her rock and read a new book that Xerath had brought her. She did not know what was happening in the world outside her cage. She did not know that an army of children had begun a revolution with nothing but curiosity and kindness. But she felt something different in the air, something that felt almost like hope. The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest building on the capital world. It could hold 5,000 representatives from across the galaxy. Today, every seat was filled. Maya sat in a clear containment pod at the center of the chamber. She wore clean clothes that Xerath had helped her choose, a simple blue dress that reminded her of Earth's sky. For the first time since her capture, she had been given a translation device. A small implant behind her ear now let her understand every word spoken in the hall. The fact that they had given her this implant was important. It meant that someone, somewhere, had acknowledged that she might actually need to understand what was being said. It was a small thing, but it filled Maya with hope. Counselor Verathis stood at the speaking platform. Her scales were a nervous shade of pale green, but her voice was steady. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment. "I have served on the Sapiens Ethics Board for 20 years, she said. "In that time, I have helped determine which species qualify for protection under galactic law. I have always trusted the Bureau's classifications. I believe the scientists knew what they were doing." She paused and looked at Maya. Their eyes met across the vast chamber. "Then my daughter talked to a human child," Varathis continued. "A 7-year-old girl asked a simple question and received an answer that changed everything. I realized that I had been blind. I had been complicit in an atrocity." The assembly murmured. This was strong language from a government official. Verathis presented her evidence. She played recordings of Maya's conversations with the children. The assembly heard Maya describe her home, her family, her hopes and fears. They heard her sing a song from Earth. They heard her explain human philosophy and history and culture. Then came the scientific testimony. Xenobiologists from a dozen worlds examined the data on human intelligence. They analyzed human language patterns and found complexity equal to or greater than most council species. They studied recordings of human art and music and literature from Earth signals. "The evidence is clear," said a Draveshi scientist, his crystal body glowing with emphasis. "Humans are not only sapient, they are highly intelligent. Their classification as non-sapient was based on fear and prejudice, not science." Director Kethvaros was called to defend himself. He stood at the speaking platform, his scales flickering between defensive colors. "You do not understand what humans are," he said. "They come from a world that kills 90% of all species before they reach adulthood. Their sun bombards them with radiation. Their atmosphere is a toxic mixture of oxygen and nitrogen. Their gravity would crush most of us within hours." He pointed at Maya in her containment pod. "That child, that small juvenile, has bones dense enough to survive impacts that would shatter any of us. She can run for days without stopping. She can heal from wounds that would kill a Valorian in minutes. Her ancestors hunted prey by chasing it until it died of exhaustion." He turned to face the assembly. "Humans are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. We cannot afford to treat them as equals. We must protect ourselves." The assembly fell silent. Fear hung in the air like a fog. Many of the representatives were nodding, persuaded by Kethvaros' words. Then Maya's voice cut through the chamber. "May I speak?" Everyone turned to look at her. The small human girl in the containment pod, surrounded by thousands of beings who feared her. The assembly leader hesitated. Giving a specimen the right to speak was unprecedented. But the eyes of the galaxy were watching. News networks were broadcasting this hearing to billions of viewers. "You may speak," the leader said. Maya stood up in her pod. She was small and young and alone, but she did not look afraid. "Everything he said about my world is true," she said. "Earth is dangerous. My people are strong. We evolved as hunters." A voice carried across the silent hall. But he left something out. She looked at the representatives, one face after another. "He told you what we are capable of. He did not tell you what we choose to do. He told you we can hurt. He did not tell you that we can also love." Maya took a deep breath. "On my world, strangers risk their lives to save children from burning buildings. Doctors spend years learning to heal the sick and then travel to poor places to help people who cannot pay them. When disasters strike, people who have never met each other come together to rebuild. We create art that makes people cry and music that makes people dance and stories that help people understand what it means to be alive." Her voice broke, but she continued. "I have been in that cage for 18 months. 18 months of being stared at like a monster. 18 months of being told that my words are just animal sounds. 18 months of crying alone in the dark because I miss my mother's hugs." Tears ran down her face. "You were so afraid of what I could do that you never asked what I would do. You never asked if I was scared or lonely. You never wondered if I dreamed about going home." She pressed her hand against the wall of her pod. Zirith asked, "A 7-year-old child was braver than your entire bureau." She looked at me and saw a person. She talked to me and heard a person. She was not afraid because she had not yet learned that she should be. Maya's voice grew stronger. "My people have a saying. Do not judge someone until you have walked a mile in their shoes. It means you cannot understand another being until you try to see the world through their eyes. You looked at my teeth and my bones and my strength and decided I was a monster. You never tried to see through my eyes." She looked directly at Director Kathvaros. "You are right that humans are dangerous. We can be, but we are also kind and curious and creative. We dream of touching the stars. We tell stories about heroes who protect the weak. We believe that every person, no matter how different, deserves to be treated with dignity." Maya sat back down in her pod. She had said everything she could say. Now it was up to them. The assembly voted. When the results appeared on the display screens, Maya could not believe what she was seeing. The vote was unanimous. Every single representative had voted the same way. The classification of humans as non-sapient was overturned. Maya was to be released immediately and returned to her family. An official apology would be issued to the human species, and the Exotic Species Bureau would be investigated for its practices. The chamber erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Representatives argued with each other. Director Kathvaros stood frozen, his scales cycling through colors of shock and disbelief. But Maya did not notice any of this. She was looking at the viewing gallery, where a small figure with powder blue fur was jumping up and down with joy. Zirith had kept her promise. She had not let Maya be forgotten, and because of her, everything had changed. 6 months had passed since the assembly vote. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Exotic Species Bureau had been dissolved. Its directors faced charges for their treatment of sapient beings. The Galactic Menagerie had been transformed from a zoo into a cultural exchange center, where species could learn about each other as equals, rather than as captives and spectators. 17 other species that have been classified as non-sapient were granted new status. Researchers went back through old files and found case after case where fear and prejudice had overruled evidence and logic. Beings who had spent years in cages were finally freed, and humanity had received something no one expected. An invitation. The Valorian hegemony sent a formal message to Earth, offering humanity a place in the galactic community. not as specimens to be studied or threats to be contained, but as equals to be welcomed. Human diplomats met with alien representatives for the first time. Trade agreements were discussed. Cultural exchanges were planned. But none of that mattered to Maya as much as what was happening right now. The galactic starship Reconciliation dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a small yellow star. Maya stood on the observation deck and watched through the viewport as a blue and green planet grew larger against the black of space. Earth, her home. After 20 months of separation, she was finally going back. Zirith stood beside her, her powder blue fur brushed and clean for the special occasion. Her mother, Council of Varithis, had given permission for Zirith to make the journey. It was important, Varithis said, that the girl who started this change should see how it ended. "It is beautiful," Zirith said, staring at the planet. "I did not imagine it would be so blue." "That is the oceans," Maya said. "Remember when I told you about them? They cover most of the planet. I want to see them. I want to put my feet in the water like you described." Maya smiled. "You will. I promise." The ship descended through the atmosphere. Maya watched the clouds pass by the viewport, white and soft and familiar. She saw the curve of a coastline and the green of forests and the gray of a city, spreading across the land. The landing site was a flat field near the city where Maya's family lived. As the ship touched down, Maya pressed her face against the viewport and looked for them. She saw the crowd first. Hundreds of people had come to watch the alien ship land. News cameras pointed at the vessel. Government officials stood in important poses. Security officers kept the crowd back behind barriers, but Maya was not looking at any of them. She was looking at 3 figures standing at the front of the crowd, waving frantically at the ship. Her mother, her father, her little brother, who was not so little anymore. The ship's door opened. Maya ran. She did not walk slowly or carefully. She did not wait for ceremonies or speeches. She ran down the landing ramp as fast as her legs could carry her, and she did not stop until she crashed into her mother's arms. Her mother held her so tight that Maya could barely breathe. But she did not care. She buried her face in her mother's shoulder and smelled the familiar scent of home and let herself cry. "My baby," her mother sobbed. "My brave, beautiful baby. You came back to me." Her father wrapped his arms around both of them. Her little brother grabbed her leg and would not let go. They stood there together, the 4 of them, holding each other in the sunlight of Earth. Maya had imagined this moment 1,000 times in her cage. She had dreamed about it every night. But the reality was better than anything she had imagined. The warmth of her family's touch, the sound of their voices, the knowledge that she was finally home. When she could finally speak, she pulled back and looked at her family. "I brought a friend," she said. She turned and looked at the ship's landing ramp. Zirith was standing there, hesitating. She looked small and nervous, surrounded by a world full of strangers. Maya walked back and took Zirith's hand. "This is Zirith," she said to her family. "She is the one who saved me." Maya's mother looked at the small alien child. She had been told about Zirith. She had watched the recordings of her daughter's conversations in the zoo. She had seen the assembly hearing where Zirith sat in the gallery, cheering when Maya was freed. She opened her arms. "Thank you," Maya's mother said. "Thank you for talking to my daughter when everyone else treated her like an animal. Thank you for being brave when the adults were too scared to see the truth." Zirith walked forward slowly, unsure of human customs. But Maya's mother did not wait. She pulled Zirith into a hug, the first human embrace the young Deshan had ever experienced. "You are family now," Maya's mother said. "Any friend of Maya's is part of our family." That night, they had dinner at the Chun family home. Zirith tried chocolate ice cream for the first time and declared it the best thing she had ever tasted. She learned about human birthday celebrations, and was amazed that humans set fire to food and then made wishes before eating it. She listened to stories about Maya's childhood and shared stories about her own life on Desha. When the evening grew late, Maya took Zirith outside to look at the stars. "That one," Maya said, pointing at a bright spot in the sky. "That is where you are from, 8,000 light years away." Zirith looked up at the distant star. It seemed so far now, but it did not seem far when we were talking through the barrier. "No," Maya agreed. It did not. They sat in silence for a moment, two children from different worlds, looking up at the same sky. "What happens now?" Zirith asked. Maya thought about the question. So much had changed. So much would continue to change. Human ships would soon travel to distant stars. Alien visitors would come to Earth. Two civilizations that had never known each other existed would learn to live together. "Now we build something new," Maya said. "A friendship between our peoples. It will not be easy. There will be misunderstandings and mistakes and people who are afraid. But we will keep trying, because that is what people do." She looked at Zirith and smiled. "It all started because you asked me a question. You asked where I was from. Such a simple question, but it changed everything." Zirith's fur shifted to a warm shade of pink, the Deshan color for happiness. "I just wanted to know. You looked so sad, and I wanted to understand." "That is the most important thing anyone can do," Maya said. "Want to understand. Be curious about others instead of afraid of them. See the person instead of the monster." Somewhere in the galaxy, the old exhibit hall in the menagerie stood empty. The warning signs had been removed. The containment fields had been shut down. In their place, a simple plaque now hung on the wall. It read that the most dangerous assumption is that difference means danger. Here a child's question brought down an empire of fear. Here humanity taught us that the deadliest thing in the universe is not strength or speed or endurance. It is the willingness to see another being as less than a person. And below that, two names were engraved, Maya Chun and Zirith of Desha. The first friends. Their story would be told for generations. It would be taught in schools across 1,000 worlds. It would remind future beings that sometimes the biggest changes begin with the smallest people asking the simplest questions. And whenever someone asked how the great friendship between humans and the galaxy began, the answer was always the same. Began when a child looked at a stranger and saw not a monster, but a friend waiting to be made.